Hello, and welcome to What's Doing. Every country in the world has an official or independent regulatory which keeps the content in check for its citizens. The Communications and Multimedia Content Forum of Malaysia is a group that looks after and promotes the way content is managed on the internet and other electronic platforms in Malaysia. It's like a team that helps make sure that the things people see and hear online and other platforms meet certain standards. This group is made up of different people from the communications and multimedia industry, like advertisers, broadcasters, and content creators. They work together to develop rules and guidelines that aim to keep the content online creative, innovative, and healthy for the industry to grow. Heading this forum as a CEO in Malaysia is Mediha Mahmood. Mediha is a dynamic leader at the forefront of Malaysia's communications and multimedia landscape. As the CEO of the Communications and Multimedia Content Forum of Malaysia, Mediha exemplifies a commitment to advancing the nation's media industry while fostering creativity, innovation, and inclusivity. With a wealth of experience in media management and strategic planning, Mediha brings a visionary approach to her role, driving initiatives that promote excellence, diversity, and ethical standards within Malaysia's vibrant content ecosystem. Her leadership is characterized by a dedication to empowering content creators, nurturing talents, and harnessing the transformative power of media to shape Malaysia's cultural identity and societal progress. Through collaborative efforts and forward-thinking strategies, Mediha Mahmood continues to elevate the Communications and Multimedia Content Forum as a catalyst for positive change and growth in Malaysia's media landscape. Welcome, Mediha, to What's Doing. Thank you so much for taking time and coming to the show.
Happy to be here.
So, Mediha, tell me one thing. What was your content journey and how did you land up leading Content Forum Malaysia?
Okay. I never thought I'd get here in the content industry really because I'm legally trained. I've got a law degree. I was a lawyer for a few years. And then I decided to leave the practice of law and found myself in Astro. And in Astro, I was put in the regulatory and affairs sort of. It changed names a few times. But we essentially looked at regulations and compliance and stuff like that. But for me, I found a niche in content reviews or content regulation, because there were a few things that I realized when I joined Astro is that content regulation is it's sort of everywhere in this country. You've got the Ministry of Health looking at, let's say, medicine advertisements or cosmetic advertisements, and then you've got the PDRM, you've got LPF, you've got all sorts of regulations, all sorts of regulators. And I felt that the company would do very well if it could have a one-stop center where they can be creative, but if they approach anything that might be a little bit gray, then they can come to us at regulatory and say, is this all right or not? So that's how I found myself in Astro, and I stayed in Astro for the next 11 years, by the way. Not so sure if that's a good thing, but it was really it was a whole comfort level kind of thing. And then I turned 40. Midlife crisis, I decided I don't know if I want to resign or retire here in Astro, and I felt that I was not that old that I couldn't do something else. So I left, and I found myself in aviation, in AirAsia Digital. So in that space where, the CEO's absolutely dynamic, and I joined when the pandemic started. So the airplanes were grounded, and AirAsia had to look at the digital side of their business a lot more. So during my stint there, which was only for about 2 years, we opened an academy, we opened a restaurant. There was also a music company as well. And I found myself still doing things like content. And while I was there, the Content Forum, who I had been a representative in for Astro for many years, were looking for new leadership. And so they approached me and said, would you like to take the lead in the Content Forum? And I jumped at the chance because I really thought that the Content Forum had a lot of potential that was sort of untapped. And I really appreciate the opportunity to try and tap through and see what we could do with it. So, ta-da, I'm here.
So what was the motivation behind getting into Content Forum?
One thing is, I always believe that everything like the content industry it's an industry that's not really looked at with as much seriousness as it should in this country. I really feel, especially now when we're not just talking about filmmakers and music producers, we're talking about content creators who are huge. I would see it as a content creating industry, and I see it as a profession. And I felt that my personal opinion was there might have been a lot of challenges and restrictions, or at least perceived to be restrictions, for people to be creative in this country. And that would stop our content from being exported. It also would stop opportunities for our content or our Malaysia itself to be known around the world. And I felt that the Content Forum was a great place for us to find that balance between facilitating a thriving content economy or content industry, but making sure that everything's ethical and responsible and professional as well.
So can you give me an overview of the Content Forum in Malaysia, and what is the mission within the forum and what they're trying to achieve?
I guess I could just give you an analogy. It's just like, let's say you have a bunch of friends who are going to be roommates and or housemates, and you all come to a house and you guys sit down at a table and decide, okay, we need some rules. Kitchen rules, bathroom rules, all sorts of rules. And you all sit down and agree that these are the rules that you're going to be complying with. And you also agree, if you leave your laundry in the basket for more than 5 days, you put $10 in the jar. And you keep on doing that. And you all say, okay, consensus, everybody agree, set. And then you all move into the house. And then you regulate yourself that way. And if somebody breaches it, spill something, doesn't wipe it up, we all agreed, put 5 ringgit in the jar. Put 5 ringgit in the jar. So that's self-regulation in the Content Forum. We have a bunch of members from broadcasters such as Astro, Media Prima, Star Media Group. We've got advertisers, advertising associations like the 4As and MAA. We also have brands. We've got civic groups, and that's very important to us as well. Civic groups and in institutions of higher learning, because we need to have a balance between industry, profit making, and also people who are looking at society and community interest. So all of these guys get together. We all agree that this is the content standards and best practices for the content ecosystem here in Malaysia. It's in a form of a content code, which can be revised at any time to adapt with the new things that are coming in. Everyone setuju, this is the rules. Everyone knows if you breach it, there is a panel, a complaints bureau, consisting of each person in each category. There's an advertiser there, there's a broadcaster there. We will sit down and review that content together, get statements from everyone, and decide whether or not you breached. If you breached, then you might get a compound of a certain quantum. And I can tell you that 100% of the time, when there has been a breach and we have issued a compound, they pay. Because it's a collective thing. You have invested in the code, you agreed with it, and you then respect the system.
You can't falter.
Yeah, you can't fault out. And they don't. I mean, they can if they wanted to. But they're all, they trust the system and they abide by it. So that's pretty cool.
So what is the difference between the Content Forum and LPF?
Oh, wow. Okay. Might need another episode on that. No, okay, so LPF, Lembaga Penapisan Film, the Film Censorship Board, they've got a bigger mandate. They censor and they can decide to ban everything that comes to our Pawagam, to our theatres, right? So all movies that end up in the TGVs and GSCs of the world will have to have gone through LPF. So like, again, I said, they decide whether to approve or to approve with edits or to ban entirely. We don't do that. So LPF looks at films and also ads, advertisements. The Content Forum, it's written in our content code, we are not an approval body. We don't give approvals. We don't ban stuff either. So the Content Forum is self-regulation.
Okay.
So you guys know what the rules are. We leave you to it. But if you breach it, then we're going to take a look at it. It's very much more reactive in that way.
So is there a playbook or there's a Bible which
Should
people
have
have
brought
to
it with me. Yes, it's called the Content Code. The latest version is 2022. Because when I came in, I decided that we really needed to revamp it. Because in 2020, when I joined, there were a lot of things that were not included in the code. The code was very old, 2004, if I'm not mistaken. And at that time, there were no influencers. Influencer marketing wasn't a thing. There was all sorts of things like, Shopees and Lazadas were not a thing either. So it was really time for us to revamp it. So we revamped it. And it is a result of not just kita short sendiri come and talk about it, but we also we met up with stakeholders who were relevant to the issue. For example, if it's a religious content issue, we went to JAKIM. Where we wanted to include something on persons with disabilities, we met with PWD associations, we met with Senator Razadiba, and all sorts of other stakeholder consultation. We also had a whole global benchmarking exercise because we want to know what other jurisdictions are doing, because some jurisdictions are way more advanced than us. So we needed to look at that and also make sure that it's something that is relevant to Malaysians. And then we did what I'm pretty proud of is his whole nationwide public consultation. So the entire country was called to also contribute to the code. And that, Abid, was fantastic because the public raised issues that we didn't catch, we didn't see. For example, the whole ethical reporting of suicide. When we were told during the public consultation, people were telling us that there is a whole concept of how the unethical reporting of suicide or too much details in reporting of suicide can actually lead to harmful effects on people who are vulnerable. So method of suicide, no publishing of suicide notes, that kind of thing. So when we did our research, it is a guideline, even MOH at the guideline, but it wasn't something that was fully implemented. So we included that in the content code. So now it's an offense lah, as in, you really can't be putting too much of that. So the beauty of this content code, I wish I had it so I can show it to you, but it's online as well, my content forum at contentforum.my. It is a document that doesn't need to go through Dewan Rakyat, Dewan Negara to be changed. It's not legislation. So if, let's say, during my conversation with you, and you tell me, okay, there's an area in the content code that you guys might not have looked at yet. Maybe it's AI. AI needs to be regulated. And then we go like, yeah, okay, we'll check on that. And we do the research and we realize, oh yeah, we definitely need to put this in. We can do that at any time. And we can go through the entire process of consultation, research, benchmarking, public consultation to make sure that that content code is always adaptable and flexible to technology and also the society.
So it's not written in stone.
Nope.
So it can evolve.
That's right.
And that's a great thing because
Yes,
what
because
laws were
content,
made
yeah.
like 10 years ago are redundant now.
That's right.
And I think with technology moving at such a high speed, I think that kind of changes needs to happen at
That's right.
that speed. So,
exactly. Yeah.
So what are the main challenges the forum is facing where content creators are concerned, in Malaysia at this point of time?
One thing is, I've got to say, content creators in Malaysia, they are an incredibly creative lot. Honestly, if I'm on, let's say, TikTok, I can just lose 3 hours just like that, just looking at content.
Yeah.
They're just brilliant, Yeah. But I think the main challenge for us is when, we are very used to the journalists and editors of mainstream media who have been trained with journalism ethics and stuff like that. They know what they can and cannot report. But now we have a group of social media mojos, mobile journalists. They're not trained. They're not educated.
Mojos,
And
that's a
what they're
nice
called.
word.
That's what they're called, mobile journalists. So the mojos, they might just be teenagers who are interested in news and current affairs. They may not have had the training of journalism or educated about it. And that's not entirely a bad thing. But this leads to certain situations where they might have crossed the boundaries they didn't even know existed, right? So that is one thing. We want people to continue to be content creators, to churn out the content that we all love, but also understand what the boundaries are so that they don't go into violative content or produce harmful content. So I think that's the major challenge for us.
There have to be checks and balances.
Yes.
Because, it's not free for all. It's
That's
not a buffet
right.
going on.
That's right. And also one unique thing about Malaysia is the cultural sensitivity, right? So a lot of content creators, sometimes they are in a little bubble or in their little community. They might be used to using certain words or saying certain things. But when you post it on social media, it's not just to your bubble, it's to the entire nation, to the entire country. And then they find themselves in trouble because they've said something that's actually quite racist. Or they've said something that's racist in the international arena, like blackface or stuff like that. And sometimes it's pure innocent ignorance, right? And then they find themselves in trouble. And the worst thing about social media is if you're in trouble, you're going to get cancelled very fast. Right? And these are young people.
It's a woke nation now.
Yeah, it's a woke nation. And they cancel you, they dox you, and they find your relatives or whatever it is. And it can really take a toll on people's mental health as well. So I think that's something that we also need to look at when it comes to challenges for content creators.
But on the flip side,
Yeah.
where you see the growth and development of the content industry in Malaysia.
Great growth. quite honestly, okay, I see it like this. When we facilitate them embracing the digital platforms, the tech and all that, so it unlocks new avenues for content creation and also for distribution of content and monetization. I feel that if we help them leverage content creators, we help them leverage, then we can enable them to reach global audiences the way that maybe our films couldn't actually make. Potential new revenue streams, for example, or and I think this is necessary because Malaysia, it's I don't know. I always feel that Malaysia is full of content. It's a content haven, right?
It is.
You've got multiple races, multiple religions. Everybody's, I mean, we have tourists coming in here saying the same things. This is something very unique.
And they make content themselves.
They make content themselves. And, if you make content about Malaysia, Malaysians love it.
Yeah.
So it's going to go viral very soon. But yeah, it's a content haven. And more people around the world should really get to know us the way they know about South Korea, for example. Maybe our films will get there. But it might be faster for our content creators to take us there. And I feel that we should all sort of facilitate this from government, education institutions, parents, communities. We need to invest in this industry, content creation, so you can, sort of nurture the talent and have this pipeline of content creators, for the future.
So how does Content Forum facilitate networking and collaboration for the content creators?
We don't do that much, but we are going towards it. I think for us as well as a industry forum, self-regulatory organization, we're not actual content creators. We try. We've got some followers on TikTok and stuff. But we do understand, or we do recognize that we've got a fantastic network, broadcasters, advertisers, and all that. So right now, what's lacking on our side is that connection with the content creators and influencers. But we've had engagements with them. And they tell us, they really want to be able to continue to monetize and make content and know the rules, but they don't want to read our content code. And I don't blame them. It's a book. Nobody wants to study the book. But they did tell us that we need to find a way for influencers and content creators to recognize a framework where they know what the boundaries are for everything. Mm-hmm. So we'll be working with them this year. I don't want to call it a handbook. They might not even want a book. Maybe they want, tutorials or something visual. But this is what we will be doing in the second half of this year. We're going to work with influencers to make sure that whatever it is that we want to guide them on is something that they will consume easily instead of us giving them yet another book to read.
But more visual rather than...
More visual, yes.
Than written stuff.
That's right.
So is there any example of successful collaboration or initiative which Content Forum has, has done in the content creation space?
I think I can probably highlight one of our biggest things last year. It's just February now, right? But last year, we collaborated with TikTok. We had this thing called Surfs Up Digital Literacy Summit. So in this, we partnered with TikTok. We had content creators, influencers, regulators, a whole mixed bunch. And we had both the minister and deputy minister to attend as well. And it was where we used this opportunity to talk about how content creators can use the features in the platform on TikTok to do what they want to do, but at the same time highlight to them what are the community guidelines and what are the safety features that they can use to protect themselves. And also during this session, we also had an opportunity to speak to TikTok about it and explain to them that there needs to also be a perspective on how these community guidelines need to take into account local sentiments as well, because things which might not be as sensitive in other countries might be sensitive here. We've got other laws and stuff like that. And the great thing is TikTok was they were the first people or company to sign our Content Forum's digital literacy pledge. And this is a digital safety pledge, I think, digital safety pledge. So it had a bunch of things that they agreed to look at for the purpose of digital literacy and safety.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. But again, going back to the whole diversity and inclusion part of it, how are you guys facilitating that part in the content creation space?
For us, if you took a look at our content code, in fact, this is something that we always believe in. We believe that public consultation is needed so that no one is left behind. So everyone is included in this conversation. So even if we talk about, let's say, religious content, there tends to be a focus on just Islam or Muslim related content. But we also talk to those of other faiths, and more often than not, they have the same concerns. It's the same concerns when it comes to religion. We don't want people to exploit religion to sell products or services, for example. But I would, to answer your question, Abid, the whole point about diversity and inclusivity, there's this thing that I need to check because I forgot. Actually, I can't find it. Anyway, there's a content code provision that we basically put in everything that we could think of, where it says that there should not be any gratuitous negative emphasis on, I'm going to rattle this off, race, religion, culture, ethnicity, national origin, gender, age, marital status, socioeconomic status, political persuasion, educational background, geographic location, sexual orientation, or physical or mental disability. Basically, anything that people can discriminate you against, we've added that in to make sure that they shouldn't in terms of content. An example I can give you is, if you might have seen recently headlines which identify a person's race or ethnicity or nationality. That's actually not good journalism. Like if you continue to see headlines, say, example, warga Rohingya rob or rape or whatever it is. When you put it in a headline, what you do is you perpetuate stereotypes and stigma and discrimination, right? And there is no purpose for you to put it there. I understand it is a fact that you can use in the news. It can be in the news. But when you use it as an inflammatory or provocative headline, that's not good.
You're setting the tone.
You're setting the tone, yes. And, media influences the people. So there is no other niyat or intention of using that headline other than to create that feeling of hate or malice. Similarly, when people use race when they identify drunk drivers, why is it has to be, if it's a drunk driver who happens to be Indian is in the headline, right?
Bad rep.
Bad rep. But it doesn't mean that there are no Malay drunk drivers or Chinese drunk drivers. But there it is just clickbait. Because if you put that, people click on it. If they already have a predisposition to hate Indian drug driver, then they look at it and say, yet another one. So this is the kind of conversations or narratives that we don't want the media to perpetuate. Because once they perpetuate it, it becomes a whole community discrimination, stigma, and stereotypes. So this is just an example of what we do to make sure that diversity, inclusivity is also protected.
Are there any specific initiatives or projects, aimed at amplifying the underrepresented voices in the content industry?
I'm glad you asked that. There's quite a few, but I can give you an example of what I just had. I had a conversation this morning, and this is with regards to people with disabilities. Now, usually in Malaysia or with anywhere else, when you say disabilities, you think wheelchairs, you think ramps, which is very important, of course, accessibility to buildings and all that. But when you talk about content, there's just so much more that we need to look at. Disability inclusive language, for example. The fact that you shouldn't be using things like retarded to insult someone. The fact that you shouldn't be portraying people with autism a certain way. So many things. So we are working with the Persons with Disabilities Associations, the Autism Association, people with lived experiences, not just people who read about it, people who actually live it. And we are hoping to come up with guidelines or even a module so that broadcasters and content creators know that there are certain things that you shouldn't use. You need to use neutral languages. There are certain things that you might not find offensive, but it's actually offensive, right? Because some people think that, for example, anak istimewa, a special child, and then you portray it in. Usually, persons with disabilities are either portrayed as something you need to pity, and then another time it is something that they used to ridicule in jokes and stuff, which is not good at all. And if you look at social media, are you on Twitter or X or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay. So if there is a huge accident, more often than not, you see somebody commenting, the driver's going to take out an OKU card. They immediately do that because a few years ago, there was a driver who caused an accident and had an OKU card. But this has become a running joke.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and it's not good because then it adds to the stigma to people who are, OKU or PWD. So we're working with them to find ways. Number one is for the content ecosystem to to empower them for it, to make sure their rights are protected. But at the same time, we also work with them to make sure that they have access to content, like closed captions, sign language, things like that as well.
So basically, it's more about teaching. It's more about education.
Advocacy, yes.
It's more about that, because I think half of the people don't understand and they don't know that these
Correct.
things are wrong.
That's
They
right,
shouldn't
that's
be
right.
using that.
Yes.
And I think that's where they falter.
That's right.
But means you pretty much in the middle of all the content stuff which is going on in Malaysia. What is one of the primary trend which you are seeing right now, which is emerging in the Malaysian content space?
Trend. You're not talking about TikTok dances or something, right?
Earlier it was like 100-part series, which has come down to 6-part series now. Now that has moved on to TikTok or to Facebook. That is that's one of the
Yes.
trends which were there. So is there anything which is right now which is trending as part of the content delivery?
I see a trend that's it's not the best trend, but I would like to talk about it. I see a trend of content creation that baits people with emotional responses. Clickbait, hate bait, rage bait. So we see this because on certain platforms, I think on all platforms, you can monetize based on engagement, right? So if you put something that is going to invoke rage, you talk about something racist or sexist or some really bad take that everybody's going to start arguing about. Even if all your comments are hate, even if everybody is reposting your post to tell you how stupid you are, that's still engagement and you still get money from it. And a lot of content creators, not a lot lah, but some content creators don't mind. And they use this as their modus operandi to continue with such content.
Making money out of misery.
Making money out of misery and making money out of malaga-lagakan orang. You're making people argue and hate each other. And that's really very, very disturbing because they're, social media users are getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
Right? And in the old days, you'd say, oh, the only racists are the boomers. No. You're seeing very young people with a racist mindset now. And that's something they got from social media, which is very bad. So I feel that we need to play a role as social media users. We should not amplify this. Don't feed into this need. I understand. Sometimes I'll be looking at something and go, oh my goodness, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And I really want to rage about it and tweet about it, or make a whole thread. You can if you want to, but don't direct people back to that user. Screenshot without it, or referring to what I've seen online, but don't engage with the offensive tweet or post. And a lot of people don't know this, but reposting, commenting, or otherwise amplifying a harmful post makes you liable to the harmful post.
Yep.
Right? And people don't know. And I would try to make people see this by saying, let's say you saw child pornography. You retweet it to say, oh my God, this is child pornography, or this is bad.
You're amplifying it.
You are amplifying it, and you don't want that because that's against the law. Similarly, with any post you see that is violative, you can repost it or like it or whatever you do to it. As long as you provide engagement to it, you're sharing it, you're liable. So
that's a good thing, because again, that you should not go scot-free for
exactly
amplifying hate.
Yes, precisely.
So can content creators stay innovative and adapt to evolving audience preferences in today's day and age?
Yes. Like I said earlier, they're a very creative lot. I think they've adapted to so many things. I mean, trends used to last for a long time. Now, if I speak to my sons, I've got teenage sons, trends can last for just a couple of days.
It's a cycle now.
It's a cycle. And if I say it a little bit late, Mom, nobody talks about that anymore. Nobody does that anymore. So, lama. Ketinggalan again.
you get out of date very soon these days.
Yes, exactly. But these content creators are amazing. Their time management, one thing is they can churn out content super fast, right?
And that's how they stay relevant, because
That's right.
it's so topical and
Very
so fast.
topical, yes. And it's like, how? And it's also the technical ability. Like, you can go on TikTok and you can be topical about it, you can be trending, but if you don't make it interesting enough or you don't edit it well, you still don't get the views. So they've got the critical thinking of knowing what's going to be trending. They know how to storytell it on whatever platform they're on. They're very quick to do it too, and they've got the technical skills. So yeah, I think they're pretty adaptable.
And
flexible.
they are basically evolving with the
Yes.
current content space.
Yeah, I wish I had that talent.
And we all. So, what does Content Forum, provide as resources or initiatives to support the education and skill development for aspiring content creators?
Okay, so for us, we wouldn't be able to help them with the tech stuff or how to make good content. We can connect them by having these dialogues or workshops or other collaborations with the social media platforms, yes. But what we can help content creators with is just making sure that they are protected in the way that they're not exploited. But influencers are very powerful. You can sell things very quickly if you take influencers. They're paid for their posts, for their sponsored posts and all that.
A lot.
A lot, yes. But at the same time, there are bad actors out there who might exploit these influencers and get them to sell things or make claims that they're not supposed to be making. So we always guide influencers to understand that I'm not telling you, because disclosure in advertising is a thing. You need to disclose when you're paid for stuff, especially influencers. Because if you look at an influencer's feed, right, you can't tell who's paying them for anything if they don't tell you. So we always tell them that you need to disclose. Social media platforms already have the paid partnership bug or whatever it is, right? And we tell them that's also to protect themselves. So if that advertiser or that brand does something and makes you say something that's not true, then you have that to fall back on, to say that, I was paid to do this. This was a commercial arrangement. That responsibility shifts to those people.
That brings me to the next question, is that, say for example, means content creators and celebrities get, all these big companies to collaborate with. And they have signed up with the company, they're making big bucks out of these companies. If anything goes wrong, where the company falters, and they are the content creators are the face of that brand, how much of a liability does a content creator is ready to take on, although they've just been hired by a company?
Right.
What means, who should be blamed for it?
Right. So obviously the original offenders, which is the company. But what we always tell influencers is, when you disclose yourself as a professional who is being hired as an advertiser, basically, for these companies, it also needs to come up with the paperwork. And in your paperwork, in your agreement with your clients, you should put there that they are completely liable or responsible for the content that they dictate to you. Of course, the ideal situation is for all influencers to know what the laws are. For example, they should know that we cannot make health claims when you're selling food. They should know that. But in the event that influencers don't take that step, at least making sure that they have that agreement in place with the company that waives their responsibility might save them a bit. At the same time, I also feel that influencers need to see themselves as professionals now. They are not just a person who happens to have great aesthetic content creation skills and followers. You are a professional. You are being approached by huge brands. So you need to do what professionals do. Do your homework. Make sure you're skilled. Make sure you know what you are putting on your platform. It's no longer about influencers just taking the money. They really need to take that extra step and be a professional and do the research before they put your name on it. Because even if, let's say, like I said, you waived it, you basically said, okay, I'm not responsible for the content. And let's say the company gets in trouble. Yes, they will. But your reputational risk is already shot. The million followers that the company was tapping on are now going to be turning against you because you were caught with your pants down, trying to sell products that are illegal. So you might not be risking the legal part, but you are risking your reputation. And reputation is everything for influencers.
True. But again, now I'm taking that answer,
Right.
and then positioning it in a different way altogether.
Okay.
So there are many influencers, big influencers, they have their own brand. Their own brand of slimming teas and facial product, skincare product.
Yes.
Which might not even be like approved by the regulatory bodies. And they are selling it and they are making tall claims that they lost like 20 kgs by drinking this tea.
Yeah.
what it means, if there is, God forbid, somebody get hurt or has some medical symptom which they didn't had before after consuming that product, how are they liable for? I know reputation will go down a drain,
Yeah, right.
but these are the people who are making millions out of
Yeah.
their own product. How much of the liability will come to them?
That would depend on the authorities who are going to be investigating those cases. I can't say because I have left the law for many years. You might want to get a lawyer to answer you, but the liability would be dependent upon the laws in which they are breaking and what are the sanctions that are available for them. And if they are the founder of those products, they're also the advertiser of the products, I suspect that the most of the liability will fall on these influencers themselves
Directly.
directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I thought actually,
Yep,
because these tall claims which were
Yes.
being made, I don't think
Yep.
they have been vetted through properly.
Yes, and that's a big problem now, actually, I think because of social media, because now you can plaster yourself all over social media, people can look at you. Even children are getting younger and younger in their skincare routines, okay? Now, I swear, I went somewhere to get just a couple of skincare items. I took two. I had my sons with me. My basket was filled with their stuff. And I'm like, what is this serum? I don't use serum. I'm over 40. I'm like, but they're much more inclined to protect their looks and all that. And this is being exploited by people selling you stuff which contains mercury or anything else that's dangerous. And it's being sold on so many platforms, social media as well. And you've got testimonials from so many people, and people believe it and they use it. And after many years, they are seeing the health risks of it, especially things that you consume. And I don't understand, okay, I shouldn't say that, but people who consume things to target certain areas of their body. Like you eat a pill to make some part of your body bigger or pinker or fairer. How does that make, it's not common sense. It's common sense to me maybe, but it's not common sense, right? But and there's
Targeted,
Yes.
solutions.
Yes, it's something where slimming pills used to be a thing, right?
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
people go, oh, it's just laxatives, actually, for example. But now we are focusing on if you want a slimmer face, or if you want bigger, whatever part of your body you want bigger, or fairer, or whatever it is, that's being sold and that's being bought.
You're
And
tapping into the misery of other people.
Yes, the misery, the FOMOs, and the narcissism, and everything else that comes, unfortunately, with social media and overexposure to other people's lives.
But so they are open for
Yes.
open litigation if
Of
somebody
course.
wants to turn around and sue them.
Yes. I think it's something that's happening in America. People are actually suing influencers. It might come here. We're not a very litigious society, but it might come to that.
So how important do you think that the ongoing education in the field that is continually evolving? Every day there's a new trend. Every day, like you said,
Yes.
that means we don't follow a trend for a week.
Yes.
It's a new thing. So how important is education?
Super important. Education and awareness is very important. Education, especially on digital literacy, online safety among children, is very important, because no matter how many times we say, social media platforms already say 13 and above only. No. You see children as young as 5 having their own TikTok accounts, and their parents, enable that. And I feel that you shouldn't, but if you're going to do it anyway, then you need to have important conversations with your children about the things they might be exposed to online. So that's important. Parents, teachers need to do that as well. And I also believe that things such as, and I'm sorry I have to bring this up, like scams. Online scams is a huge problem now, and people are getting scammed right and left, and on different platforms and different ways to do it. This also needs to be in the form of an educational awareness exercise. Just like as we mentioned, trends evolve all the time. The way people scam you evolve as well.
Yeah.
Right? And they've got so many ways of doing it that's so believable. And we get people complaining or lodging reports, and they're not naturally gullible or naive people. We're captains of industries, we've got we've got really smart businessmen who fall for scams. So yeah, we definitely need to have more of these awareness and
Because
education.
they are getting better and better every day.
That's right. That's
So
right.
the education is really, really important.
Very much so.
So, do you have any success stories, or notable achievements, resulting from from the content forums, efforts being put forward?
It's always an ongoing process for us. The little changes that we see in terms of how people perceive things, which we can't directly link it to our work, but we feel that it's at least because of the conversations that we've had. I would put our engagement with the media or the journalists as one of our favorite things to talk about, because journalists they are in a very difficult position. They are faced with citizen journalists who are doing everything that they're doing and faster. But at the same time, they are also held to a higher standard of ethics, right? So when we have conversations, we've had this collaboration with the National Press Club this year. So we went on a road trip to different states in Malaysia to talk to journalists, to media about it. And I like what I'm seeing in the sense that sometimes, I think you mentioned earlier, Abid, it's where people don't know what the rules are. It's just, they don't know, they're not aware, so they can't comply. And what I've seen is when they are aware and when you talk to them about why these things are important, they make those changes. And we can see those changes in the way they report. And I feel, and always journalists will say, it's not fair, the social media guys report everything, they put every graphic picture whatsoever. And I always tell them, we want the social media guys to go to your standard. We don't want you to go there. So I
Don't dumb yourself down.
Yes, exactly. So I feel that there is a movement towards that. So that's the kind of positive change that we want to see slowly and surely.
So about the measure, is there any way you have measured the impact of all the initiative with the local content creation ecosystem which has happened in the past?
Well, what we can do or what we've done is just as simple as pre and post surveys of our trainings and dialogues and stuff like that, right? But what we are also doing is we're working with, as I mentioned earlier, our members are comprised of institutions of higher learnings as well. So we are working on having actual research being done by the people who actually know how to do the research among our members, and to come up with at least an analysis of how the impact has been and what are the areas that we can further improve in our quest for self-regulation of content.
Beautiful. I think that is how it should be moving
Yes.
forward. For aspiring content creators, what advice would you give them in today's ecosystem?
Number one, protect yourself. Protect yourself. Don't let bad actors exploit you. And then number two, treat yourselves as professionals. I think I mentioned this earlier. Know the law, know the guidelines, know the ethics. And
Because this is not fun and games anymore. This
it's
is serious
not.
business.
It's a
now.
serious business. It's no longer, when TikTok first came in, it was dances,
Yeah.
right? So it was all dancing. There's nothing that you could really worry about then. But now it's different. It's very different.
It's a $1 billion industry.
It is. And we need to recognize the players in this $1 billion industries as professionals. And they need to recognize themselves and treat themselves like professionals, and not just think about how to get the views, but also, the law, the guidelines, and maybe also consider having the kind of content that we want to see, the good stuff out there as well. And I think another thing is I would also advise content creators to, don't let your content override your personhood. Who you are is more important than who you are putting out there, because your being popular and viral will only be a small segment in your life.
You can only help yourself with so many filters.
That's true. So you're really the in thing now, but eventually nobody's gonna see a 70-year-old dancing around, right, or doing TikTok videos. At least not not the common thing people will look at. So I think content creators should always remember that they need to prioritize themselves more than their content, because they will have to live with the choices that they're making now as influencers, and prioritize as well their mental and physical health in every choice that they make.
So how do you envision the future of the content industry from a content forum's perspective, and how do you think is going to evolve, and how is going to get better than what it is right now?
I feel like I'm repeating this, but I do feel that I am hopeful that we will see a future where content creation is treated with the amount of respect and importance it deserves, whether it comes from funding or from the government's perspective of how they should allow I don't like to use the word liberalize because it's a bad word now, apparently liberal, but how they allow content creators to thrive. But of course, the check and balance needs to be there. Harmful content, things that would be violative or 3R or whatever it is, that needs to be looked at as well. So to me, what I envision in the future is a thriving content industry, which is also responsible and ethical. And that really requires everybody to work together.
So, any specific skills do you think the content creators as well as the content producers in Malaysia should have so that they are well equipped for the future and how the content industry is progressing in the future?
I mean, it goes without saying, of course, creativity. I mean, they know much more than that, but it's also communication skills. When we talk about communication skills, we also need to think about what are the kind of things that they say that can get them in trouble with the laws that are existing in this country. Self-censorship, self-regulation, adapting to the trends and tech, to also be technically proficient, because these platforms are also evolving. I can't catch up really with what kind of features they introduce.
That's why I've got like 20 followers on TikTok.
Same here. I don't even post on TikTok. I'm just consuming it. But also, I think what I see in content creation, and I'm sure you being a consummate professional in this, storytelling is definitely important, right? And when we talk about storytelling in feature films, it's different from storytelling in a 60-second or 1 minute TikTok. But I've seen TikTok videos which are so short, but tells you the entire story, and you keep going for part 1, part 2, part 3, and this is a talent that I think they can continue to do it. And I think content creators should also look at collaboration skills as well. It really works, not just with brands, which is great. Brands give you the money, but also think about how you can work with CSOs or advocacy groups, and make sure that some of your content is able to bring about positive changes in the community as well.
I just loosely want to just touch base on piracy. And I know there's been it's not a very fashionable subject, and but everyone is getting touched by piracy in Malaysia.
Absolutely.
On all platforms. How is Content Forum putting checks and balances on piracy?
Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. We don't really have much of a mandate when it comes to piracy. Now, in our content code, we talk about how the existing laws in Malaysia needs to be complied with. So that includes copyright law and all that. But what we do, or what we are able to do, is to incorporate discussions about piracy within our activities. And it's really tough now, because when we have discussions with content creators, or even with individuals who create content, and they always come to us and they say their content is being reused by other people, even broadcasters, their content is being used or reproduced on TikTok. How is the piracy issue there? Or copyright issues, right? And then you've got people who are showing the entire series of something on Netflix on TikTok. And it's really complicated, and I wish I had an answer, but the only thing that we can do in the Content Forum is to continue to talk about the whole reason why piracy should be avoided. But what we do see is a problem now is that people are not respecting this whole point of piracy anymore. It's no longer about recording the movies that they look at. It's what they can get online and reproduce on their platforms. And a lot of them don't see anything wrong with it. So that is a big problem.
No, that's the main issue. Even on TikTok, going back to TikTok,
Yeah.
now you see a whole film
Yes.
in 1 minute, in parts of one minute
Yes,
each.
exactly.
And one of our friends' telefilm got leaked on TikTok. Look,
There you go.
And then it was a nightmare. But I think they are also putting some checks and balances on their platform that nobody can do piracy.
Yes,
like
I think
that.
it's also something where technology needs to evolve. I can't answer that.
AI might
Something, you find a way, because if you're relying on people are smart. I mean, I know of people who are pirating content and just watching together, a few hundred of them maybe, on Discord.
Yeah.
Right? And you can't catch that.
Exactly.
So it...
No, I knew somebody who was watching all F1 races on Discord server.
There you go. So yeah.
And they just don't want to pay for content. That's the problem.
That is a problem. That is a huge problem. And I think piracy it will continue to be a challenge for us, and especially now because there are even more platforms for us to pirate on. It's very tough.
So, are there any upcoming projects or initiatives that you're particularly excited about?
I am pretty excited about. We have been engaging with the tech and social media platforms. So we've got on board Meta, TikTok, Google, and of course all the local broadcasters and platforms. What we want to do is to have a collaboration effort to make content creators and members of the public understand the features on all these platforms for them to continue to create content or consume content, and also understand the safety tools on these platforms. Because a lot of times you see people complaining, oh, TikTok has too much bad content, or there are things on Facebook that I don't actually like, or Netflix has too much sex. They talk about this, not knowing that they're actually empowered with the tools on these platforms to protect themselves and to protect the children under their care. So I think that's something that we're very excited to work on, because these guys, Meta, Google, Netflix, they're very responsible platform. And the thing is, they need to have a conduit like the Content Forum, pushing things like self-regulation and talking about their safety features so that members of the public are also aware of it. And the best way for us to do that is to get influencers involved, because they're the ones who are using the platform. So that's something that we're doing this year.
Oh, great. Best of luck for that.
Thank you.
That brings it to the end of the show. Thank you so much, Mediha, for taking time out and coming to What's Doing.
Pleasure. Lovely place.
And we would love to hear more about what Content Forum is doing in the next year. And hopefully all the plans which you have for this year will come to fruition.
Yes, let's hope so.
And we hope that going forward, it will be a safe space for content creators as well as for the audiences in Malaysia.
Yes, let's definitely hope so.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Keeping the national interest of all consumable content worthy of consumption, Mediha and her team is doing a fantastic job. Stew on this till we meet in the next episode of What's Doing.